Hi, my name is Sarah Guthals, and I'm the Director of Developer Relations here at Sentry. And I'm here today with Ben Pepper. Ben, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hey everybody. So yeah, I'm Ben Pepper. I'm one of the sales engineers here. Generally pre-sales, but happy to help anybody with any questions they have about our platform. And Sarah and I will just kind of be taking you through, like she said, about performance today.
Yep. Take a couple seconds to introduce yourselves. Where are you located? What company do you work for? And maybe what's your favorite type of bread? The last workshop I think did like what's your favorite ice cream flavor? I don't know why I cared about bread, but decided oh, chat is disabled. Awesome. Let me see if I can fix that. And maybe Dorothy, who's helping us out, knows how to fix that as well. Show chat previews. We will get on that immediately. We'll figure that out, I promise. Today, we're going to talk about performance, like we said. In this case, maybe you have already instrumented performance, Sentry performance within your application, but you don't really know where to start. And that's kind of where I'm coming in. So we'll walk a little bit through that, and we're going to talk about where to start when you're first looking at your performance dashboard, how to create custom dashboards, and also how to set up alerts, which will be a lot of fun. I just kind of gave away this agenda, did it all in my head. Turns out I am prepped for this. And this is us, if you wanted to be able to follow up. I am Dr. Guthals on all social media, so you can feel free to find me there. All right, and we're not at Q&A yet, but what we are at is this application that I've built. Very real. In my spare time, when I'm not Director of Developer Relations, I work for this very real company called Empower Plant. It is a very, very real company. Hint, it's not. It's our demo app. But and Ben, I have asked you to come onto this webinar with me today because I'm having a problem.
For sure. What's the issue you're saying?
It's a performance problem.
Gotcha.
Here's the issue. Are you ready?
Sure.
When I go to this products page, it is so slow. Like I have patience, but this is a little ridiculous. I have these gorgeous, very real products that I'm trying to help sell with this very real company's website, and it is slow. And by the time the page loads, customers are turning away. So I'm wondering if you can help me out here.
For sure. Because yeah, I mean, a slow page load for any website is a pain and can drive away customers, but especially e-commerce is a death sentence for most e-commerce sites. So yeah, let's dig into this, figure out what's going on.
Awesome. I gave you access to my Sentry connected to this very real application, right? So if you want to share that, we can kind of walk through what's going on here.
Sure. So I have your performance dashboard pulled up here. Can you see everything right?
Yes, I can.
Cool. And this dashboard gives us some quick information about what's going on around us. So we see things like the largest contentful paint, the LCP distribution, full contentful paint information right off the bat. So as a developer, as a director of engineering, whatever your title may be, you can come to this dashboard and get a high level overview of what's going on with the application from a performance standpoint. Now, we have this view trends button, and if I'm lucky enough, once you click on it, you're brought to a page that gives you some, again, high level information. With Sentry, we always want to be able to drill down from the highest level of information down to the specific problem y'all are seeing.
Yeah, and you can see right there, there's a products page, right? It's slow.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, what's really cool about this is we have most improved transactions and most regressed transactions. So I'm assuming you just found this products load issue, right?
Yes.
Cool. So it actually won't show up in this page yet because it is not necessarily a trend. We haven't tried to fix it. We haven't tried to improve it. Right. So what we actually see up here is transactions. So calls that have been made to the application that are either the most improved, i.e. they've had a change happen and customers are getting a better experience, or they're the most regressed. So you or your engineering team made a change, it was fixed for a second, and then all of a sudden cratered. That's what these two are representing. So again, you and your team, your managers, whoever can come in here and get an idea of where should we be putting our efforts, right? And we'll get a little bit more about what this product's join page is here in a second. But looking back at this main page, I can see right off the bat, yeah, this product's load page is causing the most amount of issues for your site. Not only is it in the red graph here, the red bar here, but we also have this user misery score down here where literally everyone is seeing this issue. So let's dig into this a little bit and see what's going on. So as I click into the actual products load transaction page, I can see right off the bat that, again, these events are the ones causing the issue. These are all the 5 most recent events. I can also see suspect spans. So with Sentry error side of the house, where we have like suspect commits and all of that, where we can actually tell you which engineer we believe is responsible, we have the spans here as well. So not necessarily the code level who made the change, but we can tell you, hey, it's these HTTP client. Yeah. So we're able to say like, hey, these client calls are what's actually causing the problem here. So you don't have to guess and check your work. You can see exactly what's going on.
Yeah, so I don't have to go in and put in a bunch of like debug statements or something. I can actually just see quickly what span of transactions are causing that slowdown, or likely.
Exactly. And that's the whole thing. Like, we want to be able to give you actionable information. We don't want your teams to be taking up most of their time trying to find out where to put their energy. It's like, hey, this is the issue. Here's how to deal with it. Here's what's going on. All that context behind it is what's most important to us.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's one of the hardest parts of leading engineering teams. So, you know, in real terms, I am director of developer relations here, but I have been an engineering manager in the past, and spending the time just finding errors is hard enough, but finding performance regressions or performance issues just takes an inordinate amount of time. It's very hard for me to say that word. And so this just kind of narrows down where our engineers should start looking for the issue.
Exactly. Because yeah, like you said, errors, like an error happens. Everyone knows that, like, oh, the pages didn't load. Something went wrong. A performance issue could be like, it's fine, like the classic engineering line, right? It's fine on my side.
Works on my machine.
Exactly. So like this way we can surface information. Now, a given website, a given company may look at this and be like, no, this is expected behavior. This is what we want. Okay, cool. No worries. Like, we're not going to tell you, you have to fix it. It's just surfacing that information saying, hey, we think this is something you might want to look into. And that's really what's nice about this. So looking at this whole page, let's just dig into one of these events and see what's really going on here.
Perfect.
So when we click into the event itself, we're presented with a waterfall. And this is similar to the DevTools output you'd see in Chrome or any of your browsers. But because Sentry is hooked into your application at the code level, we get more information sent to the SDK. So what I can actually see is everything looks fine. Coming down, we get HTTP client calls. This is where we start getting some of our latency, which some of this is expected because it's just, 200 milliseconds. Like, that's okay, fine.
Yeah, but that one does not look expected.
Right, exactly. Like, this is like a clear indication that something went horribly wrong.
Yep.
So I can click on this, expand it, and I can see exactly what's going on here. So I see the spans broken out a little bit more. And I can see that you guys just have sequential database queries as opposed to select all from products, and just leave it at that. So this is where you can actually go and have your team fix this exact problem of like, hey, why are we doing sequential database queries? Let's just grab everything from the table and ship it out to the front end. Does this help kind of narrow down where we're looking?
I think so. Yeah, I think I know where at least we can start to improve this, because I don't think we need to be grabbing all of that.
Yeah, exactly. And this is like, this fix is probably realistically relatively quick. But if there were several of these that your team had to go in and spend a sprint dealing with, at least you know that you're spending that sprint usefully. It's not just, well, maybe this is going to work. We don't know. Or you get to the end of a 2-week sprint, you're like, I need another 2 weeks to get this fixed. It's like, nope, this is the issue. This is what's going on. This is how we're going to fix it. Great.
Yeah.
Problem solved.
Exactly. This actually reminds me of we recently did what we're calling these snack of the weeks, where we did lazy loading or two-phase loading, because
Mhm.
we realized this same thing where we needed to get the page loaded quickly, and then there was secondary data that didn't need to be loaded as, you know, immediately. And I think the review data might be that in this situation.
Exactly. And that's as long as you guys have the information available to you, you can make an informed, educated decision on what to do with it. It's
Mhm.
far different than just looking at it and being like, oh, stuff's broken. I don't know what to do. Let's figure that out. It's like, nope, here you go. And you can address it accordingly.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so the trends kind of help us see overall, and in this case, I just found this performance issue, so it didn't have those trends. And we were able to dig down though, right? We were able to dig down into, this is probably what the issue is. Now,
Mhm.
I want my team to start fixing this. And I also want to be aware if and when this particular page or, you know, issue pops up again. Do we really have to just be constantly sitting on Sentry.io in the browser all day, every day? Or is there another way that we can leverage this information without having to have that browser tab open?
Absolutely. So no, we don't want your engineers in Sentry all day, every day. Like that doesn't benefit anybody. If they're in Sentry, they're not actually fixing the issues, but also nobody wants another UI, another system to monitor and deal with. Like a good system should alert out to your teams or your individual engineers saying, this is a problem, go take a
Right.
look at it. Given severity, given metrics, whatever it is that your team values in terms of alerting out. We
Right.
also don't want to bombard your team with a bunch of noise, right?
Yeah.
Like I've
Or
been on call.
tons of emails, just like
Yeah,
then they end up getting ignored. It's just it becomes an issue.
nobody ignores emails. What are you talking about? Come on. We all love emails. No, and like I've been on call. I hated getting alerted out at 2 a.m. to then get alerted out
Yes.
again at 2:07 for the same issue that I'm trying to debug. So like let's get everything grouped up, and you know, same with Sentry grouping. We had that with performance. It's like, hey, this is a known issue. We're going to alert you once, and
Hmm.
then we'll stack all the occurrences of that under the same alerting structure. So you're only getting alerted once. Your team isn't getting bombarded, and they can focus their
Got
energies on what
it.
matters.
Oh, that's brilliant. So it's not just, you know, like my smart cameras do and alert me every time there's a person on my back porch and it's really a fly. I'm actually
Exactly.
getting some relevant information in these alerts.
Exactly. Yeah, because that's notifications are an engineer's worst nightmare. They're good until they're
Yes.
not.
And
Um,
also, like I said, email, it's a thing. We use Slack. Can I'm hoping you're saying there's an integration there.
there is, of course, there's
Oh,
integrations with Slack. So
good.
we can do email if your team ultimately decides they want to do that. We can do Slack, Microsoft Teams, kind of whatever your major internal communication platforms. We can handle that. But
Awesome.
let's look at Slack right now because I set up a quick one just to take a look at some things.
Awesome.
And this is the alert I set up. And like other Sentry alerts, it's all drop down menus. So I can take a look and actually I can see that this alert fired earlier, about 10
Hmm.
minutes ago, which is the one that we were
Hmm.
just testing. It shows me that it does actually hit a threshold. And I can just define what I care about. So what's going on here? I'm setting a transaction duration over an average minute interval of what's actually the problem. When I set that threshold down here, I'm saying anything that's above 2000 milliseconds, I want to be marked as critical. This lets me know that,
Got it.
like, especially I know we're in what, middle of August right now.
Yes.
Black Friday, unfortunately for the tech industry, for e-commerce site, is right around the corner.
Yeah.
Um,
And I was already having this like 10,000 millisecond issue, and it's not even Black Friday. So we need to fix this.
exactly. So like you can set these metric alerts up and literally have your teams notified only when it becomes critical or a warning issue, or if it drops below a certain threshold, hey, it's resolved. Don't sweat it. It might have been a
Awesome.
temporary increase in traffic. Um,
Yeah.
what's also nice about these alerts is, let's say an average Tuesday is pretty slow for you guys, but a Friday is really banging. Everyone just got paid. They want to buy your plants. They really care about it. We can do metric alerts, which will alert us like, hey, we're seeing 200% more traffic, but we're also seeing 200% more increase in issues, but that's not a world of difference what we would expect. So we're not actually going to alert anybody out unless it's like a warning.
Got it. Okay. That makes
Um,
sense.
and then I went through your project and it looked like there was some already integration set up. So I went and worked with Slack.
Yep.
So I can set the critical status for our Sentry instance. This is the channel you can set it in, and then you just pick your ID,
Hmm.
and this is what it becomes. So at this point, we've set up all the drop downs, all the information we care
Perfect.
about. We can save that rule, and that's it. Now it'll be punched out to Slack, and actually, let me see if I can pull this in. Yep, this is what that would look like in
Brilliant.
Slack for you.
Oh, that's brilliant. And what happens when you click on that link right there?
So if I click on this, I'm taken directly to that problem. So where we started, I can click on the alert, I can click on the path, whatever it is, and I see what's going on here.
Brilliant. Brilliant. And it sounds like we did it in Slack. I'm assuming that our PagerDuty and Microsoft Teams alert integrations are going to look very similar in terms of
Correct.
that graph and then a link quickly up to it. And of course, since Sentry is open source, you can also build your own integration. So if you're using some other kind of communication platform for your engineers, you can always build your own integration for that. So
Exactly.
awesome. Reminder, if you have any questions about what we've shown so far, please don't hesitate to ask in the chat. We have a couple of questions from before the workshop started that we'll be, walking through a little bit, but so far we've seen how this performance shows up, or where it would show up if this was a trending issue, what that performance dashboard looks like, how we can dig into where that issue might be so that we can start to figure out what that solution might look like, and then how we can set up alerts so that they can come in quickly to Slack where it's most relevant for the engineering team. Ben, we actually do have go ahead.
And actually, there's one thing I want to mention here.
Yes.
Because it's Sentry and we want to be able to give engineers as much context as possible, we not only have the performance side of the house here, but all the way down at the bottom, I have these related issues. So I can click over to the error side of the house and see what's going on here, what might have been causing some of this slowdown, all of that. And it's going to have that same contextual information. Obviously, with this app, it's a test app, so it doesn't have full rich data that a production level app would have. But being able to link from a slow page load or a performance issue to an underlying error and trace it through there like you would normally with Sentry is incredibly powerful and gives your teams that deep, rich information so they know how to act and they know what's going on.
Brilliant. Yeah. We do have a question from chat also from Ben Wittenberg. Is there a way to ignore alerts if traffic is low? So for example, if I set an alert for P95 in 4 hours and during off hours, there's only one event and it's over the threshold, I really don't want an alert. So could I handle that?
So, and please feel free to unmute yourself and we can, I just want to ask some clarifying questions.
Yes.
Ignore it, like automatically ignore it, or like if it comes in, do you want to just be able to hit like a button?
I think Ben is saying, I don't want the alert at all.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I think generally speaking, it's going to be if it happens once in that 4 hour span, then you are going to get alerted out. Generally speaking, I would say like you'd have an on-call team or something like that where it's not necessarily like an engineer specifically getting woken up 2 a.m. It'd be like a team, and if you have like worldwide coverage or things like that. I'd have to dig in a little bit more about that, but I think from everything I've read and everything I understand, like it would just alert out at that point.
That makes sense. Yeah, I'm curious though. Now I'm thinking of an out of the box kind of situation where if I were to get the same alert multiple times in Slack, like the same message in Slack, that's when I would want like my sound to go off or something. For sure. But yeah, it's tricky, right? Because maybe that one event is over the threshold and not really a big deal since it's off hours, but maybe it is an indicator of a bigger problem that just hasn't surfaced yet. And so it might still be useful, even if you ignore all off hours alerts, it might still be useful to have that logged and alerted to you so that if it does come up again, you know that it wasn't the first time in a non-off hours situation.
Exactly.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Awesome. Yes. Okay. So just checking to see if there were any other questions, but I don't think so. Not yet. Okay. So, but to Ben's point. So now I don't have to have Sentry open in a tab 24/7, and I don't have to have my email open in a tab 24/7. But let's say I'm not on call explicitly.
Mhm.
Do I really have to monitor Slack 24/7 to just like to catch these things, right? So maybe I don't even want to set up an alert because it's, Empower Plant isn't that big of a deal if there's a slow page. I mean, it is.
Mhm.
This is a very important application.
Totally.
But maybe I don't need to know it all the time. And so some things that maybe aren't alert worthy. Do I like, I don't know, just do I really have to make an alert for everything? Is there another way
No.
that I could see this type of information without it being something I monitor?
Yeah. So let me share my screen. And then I can show you quickly what it looks like to have a dashboard. And dashboards are really powerful. What these generally do, and I'm going to use our front end template just because it gives a broad idea of
Awesome.
what we can surface from the data that you could find in Discovery. You don't have to monitor Slack. And generally speaking, like for engineers, can be
Mhm.
useful for like SREs or on-call teams, things like that. But generally speaking, dashboards can be really helpful to get your engineering manager or director off your back. Hey, here's a dashboard with a bunch of information. You don't have to spend time waiting for me to respond. I don't have to find the information to respond to you. Here's some information about what's going on with the application.
And
And
also,
kind of
I
like
don't need them in my Slack channel with the alerts and constantly freaking out every time there is one.
exactly, because engineers always have a lot of context. They always know what's going on. And as you get up the chain, obviously there's less context. A manager or director can see an issue and be like, oh my God, the house is burning down. You're like, actually, this is just a Wednesday at 3 p.m. thing. Like we got it. We know what's going on. Everything's fine.
Awesome.
So these dashboards, you can customize them. You can create custom dashboards, but it's a way to give teams, directors, individual engineers can create their own for whatever they want. Ultimately, this is just going to be a way to get actionable information at a high enough level to be useful.
Mhm.
So for the front end application, we're obviously caring more about things like the web vitals, load times, FCP, LCP, those kind of
Right.
things. So we've surfaced all that information here, and you can even do like a heat map. So
Awesome.
Black Friday in the US is going to be an issue. You can see that if it's all of a sudden there's not a huge heat map, great, everything's going swimmingly. Awesome. I don't have
Mhm.
to worry about it. But you get to see that information of like where your customers are actually hitting from, what the issues can be, and drill down from there.
Got it.
So, and these are shareable to anybody in your team. Whoever has the permissions to the right data can see this. Um, so it can be something that I create for me. And like as an engineer, I may only care about, does my code that I roll out break? Like I want to look
Mhm.
good. I can leverage that for a very selfish reason of like, I want to make sure the code I push is running well. Or as a team, we want to make sure that we're ahead of issues before they start impacting a large number of customers, before I get called in by my SRE manager, whatever it is. Um, but you get to see all this information. You can create your own given, simple discovery queries that you would normally run. So basically key
Mhm.
value pairs, looking at any data that's ingested from the SDK into Sentry.
Mhm. Yep.
Does that help here?
That makes sense. Yep, that makes a lot of sense. And I think this might be one way of solving this issue that I'm going to try to pronounce this correctly. Domas asked in our Q&A, which is in their app they have different clients as teams of users or tenants, and some of them have a lot of data and users,
Mhm.
so they're clients, and others are very, very small. So is it possible to alert on average performance per client and or tenant, instead of just kind of anything that's coming into Sentry?
Absolutely. And that sounds like it'd probably be more of a metric type alert than just a, hey, every time there's an issue, alert out. Because again, that's noisy. And for larger teams, that's not helpful. But smaller teams, it might be just because usage wise.
Right.
And we can link to kind of how to set up those different types of alerts and refine how often a team is getting alerted out. And a lot of that
Mm-hmm.
has to do with issue grouping within Sentry, because if you have a really broad grouping where a 404 is grouped with a 500, you'll get alerted a lot less. But that's also not giving you a lot of insight as to what's wrong with the application. So when it comes to alerting, I can give you specifics of like, for your specific app, do this, but because applications are personal, alerting is as well. It
Right.
becomes kind of fine tuning and being like, okay, I like this information. I want to do this. I can deal with these metrics, whatever it is. And really creating that bespoke idea of what your team cares about.
Right. And it sounds like maybe these custom dashboards might be useful for an app that has multiple clients, because maybe you have you just have like a very specific set of data that you're trying to monitor for the larger clients, and then for the smaller ones, maybe they're more alerts because they're a smaller team and so easier to adjust quickly. Maybe.
Exactly.
Just guessing.
No, exactly. And that's like Sentry being developer first and being by developers for developers. we knew we didn't want to blow up ourselves with a lot of alerting. We wanted to be able to like fine tune a lot of things and not have as much opinion behind the product itself. So you guys get to develop the alerting, the dashboards, the visualizations of what's going on. We simply tell you, hey, we're pretty sure this is where the problem lives, either be it errors or performance, and do with that what you will. So
that makes sense. Ben, do you know much about micro front ends and creating separate dashboards for those?
So I was doing some brief research this morning. I was talking with a couple of our solutions engineers. This is an ongoing thing within Sentry. We are trying to bring to market. I don't have really good information right now. I do want to share out some links that we have after the call that go over this, but this is something we are looking at. It's just kind of a sticky subject that we're trying to work through. So I unfortunately don't have great answers off the bat, but we will share out some information. I'll try to get some bullet points of internal documentation that I'm reading. So there's at least something, but also always feel free to follow up with account executives, account managers, your solutions engineers, whoever you have at Sentry. And if they can't, we will find somebody who can get you the right information, at least start working through that process of micro front ends, because it is newer type of instrumenting, and it's something that we just got to work through and kind of help figure out for our customers and with our customers. So
it's true. And again, remember, we are open source, so you can also head over to our GitHub repositories and open up issues, or go into the discussion forums there and see if there's any interesting just conversations around that. And then we also have a Discord. So if you want to just more casually chat with engineers, the Sentry community, both in-house and externally, you can hop over to the Discord and start having conversations about that there. Peter in the chat or in the Q&A has asked another question, all the way from Copenhagen. Welcome. Could I create a playlist of dashboards and export them to external displays? Oh, this is so fascinating. I wonder if, so are you saying export them to external displays? Do you mean, my brain is going to a literal display, like a screen? I doubt that's what you mean though, right? I don't know, Ben, do you know this one? Do you know the context of this one at all?
I don't offhand. I'm wondering if external display isn't like a Grafana instance or something where it's like piped out somewhere else. I don't know.
We do have a plugin for Grafana.
We do.
Yes, we do. I just put the Grafana Labs plugin there in the chat. So maybe that's what you're thinking of, Peter. But yeah, what about just in general? I don't, other than these types of plugins, I don't know that there's another way to export dashboards, right?
Yeah, I don't think there's a way to get the data out of Sentry. I'm trying to think through like what that would look like. And that's like a TV screen sure Grafana would do. Thank you, Peter, for clarifying. I appreciate that. I don't think there is a way, and like Sarah said, we do have the Grafana plugin. I think in the current structure, there isn't a way to really do that cleanly outside of like a Grafana plugin or something like that.
Yeah, I think that's true. And again, we try to add Sentry in general, plug in with all of the different developer tools and reporting tools and things like that that might be useful for you. So I know with like our error handling, you might already know because most people are familiar with Sentry's error handling. We connect up with GitHub and you can actually link to the exact commit or file within GitHub and know who to tag to see about getting it fixed. So increasing the amount of integrations, and again, you can always build one or join our Discord or our GitHub repos to see if there's other interest in building these to make it more useful for us as developers. Speaking of those, Sandesh in chat has asked, but it's like the custom dashboard seems to be only built for devs. And they feel like it's hard to report some important metrics to managers over email and Slack periodically. I think that maybe the example that Ben showed for the custom dashboard is particularly useful for devs, but we can have more high level metrics shown on dashboards, right, Ben?
Yeah, so when it comes to dashboards, and I'll reshare my screen, like we have this template, but ultimately what I can do is I can just create a blank dashboard and add widgets in and get custom data out of my Sentry instance however I see fit. So as long as there's data to pull from in Sentry, you should be able to create a dashboard that's meaningful for management and higher ups. I would just recommend, like obviously with people who are less removed from code, they want to see the thing, just get clarification around what that thing is. And if we have the data in Sentry, you should be able to populate a dashboard with them and send them that link so that they're not needing to get those periodic Slack email updates that take time from everybody to deal with, where it's like, hey, just bookmark this page in Sentry and go view it whenever you want. And that way the engineers are freed up to not have to answer the questions like, hey, just self-serve for the management of go here, look at the thing, you'll be fine.
Yeah, and I'm curious. I've mostly used Sentry as a dev or a dev engineer manager, or dev engineer manager as an engineering manager. So I haven't necessarily needed to create a specific dashboard for higher up management. But the kind of follow-up question to reporting bits and pieces via email or Slack, I think that's probably more useful, as Ben said, to create that custom dashboard that's useful. And then you just kind of periodically remind higher ups, hey, this dashboard exists.
Oh, Sandesh, I thank you for clarifying. I appreciate that in chat.
Yeah,
I'm trying to think, like once the dashboard is set up, if they really do like Slack or mail reporting, I would say that's something that would be an internal conversation with the team and the company. Because ultimately, like if there's a linked page or a bookmark page that anybody can go to, that might be the easiest. It's just like it might be more of an internal conversation of like, hey, we're doing this thing. Just bookmark this thing, and whenever you want to go see it, go look at it. But that's again, it's hard for me to say like that's the solution because I don't want to prescribe anything to somebody that I don't know the internal politics behind.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I think my approach would probably be like a simple Slack integration that just reposts that link to that dashboard every Monday or something like that.
That's actually not bad. Yeah, I always forget like the slash commands and the Slack stuff you can do. But yeah, like that'd be perfect.
But it's true. Yeah, I think that's interesting. So we have another question. A little bit about a mobile app written in React Native. So this might be something we're not specifically prepared for, but if not, we can send links afterwards. So this person has written a mobile app with React Native, and automatic performance monitoring works great and they love it. But sometimes when accessing event details for certain screens, they get something that is like a UI load taking 4.5 thousand, I can't say that, 4,500 milliseconds with a short start warm up, warm start, and then missing instrumentation that's taking the 4,000 milliseconds. So do they need to set up what's in missing instrumentation manually to be able to see more details of what's taking the most amount of time to execute in that? And if so, do we have recommendations, or can that be achieved in some additional setup?
I have two thoughts on this. My first is this could be like, and please, obviously, correct me if I'm wrong at any point. I no ego attached to my opinions. So my first thought is like, this is a third-party API being called out where we don't have any visibility into that call. So it might just be a, hey, black box X is taking 4 seconds to respond. We don't know what's going on.
Right.
But if this is something, the call being made out is something that you as our customer owns, it might just cause some, or it might be mean a little bit more custom instrumentation behind the scenes with the SDK to surface that information, see what's really going on. And I see we have a link to some missing instrumentation details within Sentry docs. So I would review that, but that's my 2 guesses. Like either it's a black box and we just, because we don't own the node plugin or whatever it is, we can't see it, or it's just a little bit of additional instrumentation that needs to be set up in the SDK itself.
Yeah. And hopefully that link helps a little bit, but essentially says the same thing Ben just said. Another question, does Sentry have any way of showing arbitrary metrics and dashboards like number of user onboarding sessions completed? So less performance related metrics.
I'm trying to think, because like assuming onboarding session, because like we service session information, but I'm assuming this is more like user sign-up flow. Dave, is that accurate-ish? Because I think like if it's how many users have signed up for our website, we don't keep metrics on that because that's that's not user data, but it's metrics that we aren't specifically instrumented to deal with.
Right.
We would be able to surface things like there was a customer my team was talking about yesterday where it was the customer sign up flow was taking longer than it should because there were like 4 sequential calls out that didn't need to be there. Like there were repetitive calls. Like we would surface that information, not so much, hey, you have X number of Y invited customers signing up for your site.
Right.
Dave, if I'm even remotely in the right ballpark, let me know. If I'm not, I'm happy to go from there.
Yeah, that makes sense. In the meantime, I just wanted to mention, Philip from the chat mentioned that they built a micro front ends Sentry integration based on an example that they shared on GitHub. So I've not had an opportunity to evaluate this or know whether or not it's, something that you all want to go check out, but I will just share this with folks in general so you can see. This was the Sentry in React micro front end repository that was mentioned in the chat. Again, I have not had a chance to go through it yet, but it might be something worth looking into if you are interested in the micro front ends support.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that out, Philip. I appreciate that. Yeah,
thank you. Another question from chat, is there any way to observe service downtime?
I would assume yes, because we would surface the slow load times, the unresponsive pages, things like that. Off the top of my head, I haven't been presented with that question before, so I don't have like a ready-made answer. But yeah, kind of Dave, like you said,
calls.
Yeah, like there's not like a panel that would show up in a dashboard of like, hey, app has been down for 30 seconds out of the last 24 hours. But you kind of aggregate that data of like, okay, we know these calls are taking 10 seconds each. We have 10,000 of them. We're looking at this time of like downtime or slow response time and go from there. But I can definitely do some searching within my team and our company and see if we actually have a way to surface that. If we do, I can share that out. If not, I think it's more of a aggregated up from individual instances, kind of like what Dave is suggesting.
Yeah. There has been a question prior to this session about integrating Sentry dashboards with GCP cloud operations. I do know that we have cloud monitoring integrations, like with Google Cloud Run. So I'll share the docs here. I'm not sure if that is more related to what the person was hoping for, but I think that could potentially be useful. I don't know if you have anything else, Ben, on that.
I don't when it comes to GCP. GCP and AWS are not my strong suits. But yeah, I think that's a good place to start. And again, our support team your contacts within the company are always great sources to leverage, just because they have access to that type of information and can tailor it to your specific use case.
Mhm. Where can I find a list of all the fields reported by the basic React Native integration for a privacy audit? I imagine that might even be on our repo
I would say our repo.
or our documentation.
Those would be the two places I would start.
Yeah,
Just out of the box functionality.
yeah.
All the fields reported. And then if there are specific things that you don't want reported up to Sentry, there are several points during the ingest of a given event that you can rip that information out. So be it sensitive like PII, personal identification information, whatever that may be, you can rip that out in the SDK level. You can rip that out when it hits our servers, whatever you feel is appropriate. So I would start with those docs and kind of go from there,
Mhm.
and then see what there is.
Yep. Good point. Okay, another question from Juan. Hi there, can I exclude some specific URL paths? So I don't want to monitor the About Us page, for example. So I know that we can do it with coding, but I'd like to know if there's an out-of-the-box solution within Sentry.
So out of the box solution, assuming you mean like I basically just do a couple lines of like the Sentry init function, there isn't. By default, we're going to surface as much information, give as much context out of the box. That being said, there is a before send function within the SDK that you can simply say exclude these paths. Don't give me information about these things. It's a little bit of a code change just because you do have to write and tell us explicitly what you want to exclude. But unless it's some very like specific URL path that is like very long and all of that, and it's just literally like about/us, /about us, that should be pretty easy, pretty quick to change. But yeah, there is no out of the box functionality of like, oh, by default, we don't do about us, contact us, and those kind of things. That's just kind of the SDK wants to give as much information as it possibly can, and then have our customers dictate, oh, we don't care about X, we don't care about Y, we only care about, A. So
Makes sense. Makes sense. Another question, is there any plan for incident management and on-call functionalities to be inbuilt inside Sentry? So I think, I mean, with our integrations, for example, with PagerDuty, we do have, I think that's essentially incident management and on-call functionalities, right? I'm trying to figure out if there's anything else that might be missing from that. But yes, essentially with whether you're doing the performance monitoring or error monitoring, with error monitoring right now, you have a little bit more information, like maybe which developer you might need to call in. But yeah, I think in general, this can integrate with whatever system you already have. I think every company's incident management and on-call is a little different, but you could have specific Slack channels or Teams channels that you push the alerts to. We have that PagerDuty integration, and then yes, you can build your own integration if you're using some other platform. Feel free to follow up in the chat if there was something else missing from that. Let's see. So Dave mentioned that they believe you can filter by URL in the business plans. However, that come out of your event and transaction quota. So maybe a bad idea. Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure. I think there is a way to, because there are ways to specifically include certain URLs. So I imagine we could, like you were mentioning, Ben, kind of do the opposite.
Yeah, and so like as a sales engineer, I try not to deal with the money side of the house because I want to be focused more on the tech side. But I think, and I need to clarify this, I think if you exclude a path, it doesn't count against quota because we're not sending that information. We're not basically storing it, we aren't storing it in our databases of the events that have happened. We trash it. So I don't think it counts against your quota, but I want to double check so I'm not misleading anybody on that.
Yeah. We do have more information about quotas in general here if you want to follow up. Well, we're getting close to the end here. If you have any final questions, feel free to, did notice a beta feature when Ben was sharing screen sharing related to performance monitoring. So curious what that might do. I think we've got.
If there's a beta feature that I'm not aware of, that's gonna be fun. I don't think there was any beta features. I might be wrong.
I'm wondering if that was just something that's still technically in beta, but not technically new. Like been in beta, so I'm not sure.
Profiling.
Oh,
yes.
Profiling.
That is a thing that's in beta. We're still working through a lot of that, so I don't want to get too much into that right now. But yes, good.
We will have a blog post coming out.
Yes.
About it soon.
Good catch, Ben, by the way. Thank you for that.
Yes. I believe it was profiling, maybe.
Thank you for pointing me in the right direction, because I was looking at the actual screen, not the sidebar. So
awesome. Do you have any shiny alpha badges on anomalies and stuff? Do you mean?
I don't.
I'm not sure.
Like anything that's basically in development that we haven't even rolled out to beta yet, I think.
Right, on anomalies specifically? I don't think so, right? I can't think of anything right now.
Off the top of my head, I don't. So like we've had a couple of days of like I've been heads deep in some trainings. So I'm like,
have shiny alpha badges on anomalies and stuff. Sorry, I did read that wrong, Dave. Yes, so the profiling bit, yes. And just keep monitoring our blog. We do share anything new, even things in alpha. So we recently released alpha support for our .NET MAUI SDK. We did release our .NET MAUI SDK support in alpha recently. So if you want to follow along with any of our newest releases, you can check out our blog there or follow us on Twitter, any of the places, or join our Discord. That's always a great place to chat. All right, where is the user feedback functionality?
So the user feedback. So the user feedback function is actually really cool. And it's something that I personally like. I'm not a developer by any stretch of the imagination, but I think it's a cool input. So an app crashes, and obviously Sentry will alert out on that. You can also include the user feedback and literally have a screen that pops up and be like, hey, basically like, hey, user, what's up? What happened? And they can write in, if they want to, any information that they had. This can be both good and bad. Obviously, you can get someone who's like technically minded and be like, hey, I clicked on the thing, I waited this long, I saw this thing happen, da da da. Or you can get trolls who just want to like spam everything in, and like that's a thing. But it's a way to interact with the user to get their impressions and their workflows on what's going on.
And Sandesh in chat mentioned user feedback plus alerting could be epic. I'm going to translate the rocket ship emoji to epic. I agree. And then another question, what is release health for the application when in production?
Yeah, so I'll actually share my screen really quick. And this is getting more into the error side of the house. But when you're looking at issues, actually I'm going to go to releases for the application that we were demoing. You can tag your project, your code with release versions. And obviously this lets you know like, hey, this release was released at this time. But more importantly, when it comes to Sentry, these gray vertical bars here are releases that we did for the application. So as an engineer, this is somewhat useful. As engineering managers, directors, things like that, you can actually take a look and see, oh, hey, when we did this release, we continued seeing this downturn in crash-free sessions. What's going on there? And you can dig into that release specifically to get more information about what happened. So you're presented with the errors, you're presented with failing transactions, you can pick your slow transactions, whatever it may be, and get more information this specific release for your application, not just, well, we keep getting errors and we're not really sure what's going on. So it's a way to leverage the SDKs from Sentry to give you more granular information at a high level of what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Well, if you haven't already instrumented, your application with Sentry Performance, be sure to head over to our docs page on performance. You can probably just search Sentry Performance and it'll pop up, but I also put it there in the chat. If you're watching this not live, it'll be down in the description below. We're gonna link all of those links that we shared in chat there. But we're pretty much out of time. Are there any final questions? I did notice someone mentioned that the user feedback for React Native docs is not found. I don't know that we have a specific docs page for that though. So I'm looking at the one above that on enriching events. And we don't have a sub page for that specifically. So we can take that offline and try to find that. And then, sorry, Jorge, I might have missed what you said. So sorry about asking again, but I still can't find the fields Sentry reports by default. Oh, right. So yeah, so we can follow up with that on like what fields Sentry reports by default. I need to go look through what we've got in our docs. So we'll try to do that. And then, is there a generation report by Sentry? Generation report. I don't know if I know what generation report.
Yeah, can you expand a little bit more on that for generation?
And or feel free to hop into our Discord later, since we're getting low on time. And I want to make sure that we just have a chance to wrap up. So yeah, if you have a chance to expand on that a little bit in chat, we can try to fit it in. Otherwise, we can try to, you can join our Discord and we can try to follow up there. But we will be gathering all of these links that we shared in chat to put in the description down below if you're watching this afterwards, and or in a follow-up email. So hopefully anything that you saw today, generation of PDF reports for errors was the clarification. So can we generate a PDF? I think you can print as PDF the page, but they're meant to be clickable, drag, dive in things. So I don't think we have kind of like a pretty export of a report there.
Yeah, I think that sounds accurate.
Yeah. But thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. This hour flew by extremely quickly. And pre-start coffee conundrum. XKCD asked Monday how many holes there were in a coffee cup. Our thoughts. A topologist would say 1, a normal person, I don't know, does the opening count as a hole? A philosopher, to answer that question, consider another. If we drill a hole in the side, how many holes are there now? And a chemist would say 10 to the power of 21 in the caffeine alone. Gabrielle, I think that was a perfect way to have an end cap to the session. As I begin my next venti, this time iced, and we bid you adieu. I don't know why I said that. I've never said that in my life. I hope to see you all on Twitter and or Discord and or in our GitHub open source repos. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to follow up, and thank you all for joining. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and week. Thank you, Ben.
Have a good day, y'all.